Good afternoon again, Senate Institutions back in session. We have we're gonna go through section 9, Agency of Natural Resources, Forest Parks and Recreation. We have the Commissioner Danielle Fitzko here, along with Frank Spalding and Nate McKean. And Commissioner, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you for having us here this afternoon. For the record, my name is Danielle Fitzko. I go by Danny. I'm serving as interim commissioner for the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. So thank you for having us here this afternoon. We're going to talk about the recommended capital requests for FY 24 and 25. I was fortunate that we were together, maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I was able to provide a broad scale overview of Forest Parks and Recreation. But just as a quick reminder, the department is, we are about forests, keeping our forests healthy, intact, and sustainably managed. We're about Vermont State Parks, making memories and making accessible recreation opportunities for Vermonters and visitors. And we're recreation, supporting the increasing demand and diversification of outdoor recreation in Vermont. So the way I'm going to sort of go through the governor's recommended capital bill with you is it's really, I would say, broken out into like 3 sections. We have what's within developed state parks. So that's where we have our price fee-based areas. That would be section 9, lines 94 to 96. We also have state lands that are outside of state parks, and that would be section 9, lines 96 to 99. We're kind of calling those like outside of designated state parks.
It might have last. Yeah, small one. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I can't imagine how you deal with all the spreadsheets.
We have a few extra.
We have a few extra copies floating around. That's one thing. So.
Yeah, totally understand.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep, section 9, and we're going to be looking at lines 94 to 99, and then the last section, which is actually in the clean water section, line 119, which is about really all A&R lands. So we'll start with state parks. We know we have 56 fabulous state parks that are all across the state. When they were originally created, the goal was to have a state park near every Vermonter, and then grown over time. Last year, we hit almost 1.2 million visitors to the park. It's insane, which is a 40% increase over the past 5 years. So, as you can imagine,
and that's still coming off of some COVID times. Okay. I mean, everybody was still a little bit. I mean, I know it was outside. We were trying to do more recreation and stuff like that, but there was a lot of people still staying home. So to get that type of numbers out there, you guys are doing something right.
And they wanted to go outside, and I think the investments that we've been making in the infrastructure of state parks is places people want to go, and they want to recreate.
They're satisfied. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I never get. I represent a lot of them, and not a complaint ever. They're all happy with how clean they are, and how that makes a big difference. You know, that's a good impression they give on people visiting here.
Well, that's credit goes to the state parks team, which is about 43 strong year round, and as you know, about 400 come in during the season, which is an incredible amount to lift up that many staff coming on it. But they really make the parks run, and it's great that so many of them come from outside of Vermont. They kind of fall in love with Vermont.
Yeah.
They stay, so it's their first job. Yeah. So it's a really great experience, and I give the team huge kudos because it's a big lift to onboard that many people, and they do it so well.
There's only one I can ever think of that you should have thrown out, and that was Senator Benning started with you guys years ago. You should have just sent him back home. It's only because I think you might be listening today. So.
We have to pick on.
We're pretty good at picking on each other.
In fact, he's welcome back anytime.
We talk about the 1.2 million visitors, and that's just during the operating season, like right now, and like before parks open and the evening. I mean, that number just explodes with the amount of people coming.
When do you open? What's your date of opening?
I think that there's a rolling opening, but Nate can share a little bit more.
Yeah, the first park opens usually late April, like Jamaica State Park and Wilkeston and Connecticut River. And then it's a rolling opening and they're all open by Memorial Day, often the weekend before that.
Until Labor Day?
For some it's Labor Day, others
Oh, they
it's
don't all
it's
close
just
at the
People's
time.
Day, and then some almost into November.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, depending on, the activities that they're known for.
I should stop and give it because Nate is the state parks director.
Yep.
And Frank Spalding, I think he's been here for many, many years as the parks
Long time.
Parks project manager. I thought it would be helpful to start off before we get into the actual line items, to just kind of give you a scale of the infrastructure in state parks. I think when we think of state parks, we think of how quaint they are and it's just not too much of an infrastructure there, but it's actually pretty big when you look at it across the state. What you're looking at now is this is some BGS numbers, and this gives you the value of just structures. And in state government, state parks is the third biggest infrastructure asset holder.
Really?
You got BGS and you got the Agency of Transportation. And that's just structures, but there's also 36 public water systems, hundreds of wastewater systems, 2,200 campsites. There's beach area and 40 miles of underground water and piping. So when you put all that together, it's about $280 million in assets that State Parks manages. Here's another summary that looks at the square footage. Again, third in the state. There's about 500,000 square feet of structure space. Here's Frank is quite good at pulling numbers together, so I have some kind of fun facts for you. There's 120 toilet structures in Vermont State Parks.
That's funny.
And if you start to think about like the scale, if I could put it in like a typical home is about 2,000 square feet. FPR carries the equivalent of 315 Vermont homes, and that's about 20 homes for each like maintenance technician that we have for the state park. So it's quite a big undertaking, and it's, as you know, all across the state. Here's where FPR really goes ahead of BGS and VTrans, and it's the number of insured structures. We have over 1,000 insured structures, and and if you think about like where they are across the state, rural communities, our projects are either, that can be really big, but they can also be really small. And over the past 18 months, FPR wrote checks to 120 different vendors using capital funds for $5.6 million. So that's like an average of $45,000 per contractor. So it really does spread and support a trades workforce and economic activity really across all of Vermont.
The vast majority of those buildings are seasonal, or is that a misconception of something you'd be thinking about?
They're operating seasonal, but there are some of them, I think they're all seasonal.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, we have,
The maintenance.
I think it's accurate to say the vast majority are seasonal. Toilet buildings, lean-tos certainly are. We do have some staff housing that is occupied and conditioned and tempered in the winter. And we have the 4 maintenance facilities that are year-round facilities as well. And that's the Gifford Groton line we'll talk about later.
Yeah, what would be the revenue generated from all of the?
Yeah, so we revenue, about 75% of our budget is revenue, which would include like gate fees, concession stands, boat rentals. And I think that is around 11 million?
Yeah.
11 million.
So we generate that.
Yep.
Versus expenditures, and you're saying 75% is revenue.
75% of the parks budget is based on the receipts that Park Services and
And
receipts.
do we increase it every year like 2-3%, or is that something that happens?
It goes through rulemaking. So last year, we actually just did a price increase after an assessment of comparable prices across Vermont. And maybe you can probably give a little bit of a better overview of like what that increase was.
Yeah, it's for out-of-staters, I think it was about a $3 increase. For overnight camping for Vermonters, it was a $1 increase. Actually, for out-of-staters, it was a little steeper than that. So the impact on Vermonters was very small, and there were no increases in day use. It was all related to cabins, camping, and cottages, and that was basically a nationwide and a regional analysis of what the other states are charging and what the difference normally is between in-state and out-of-state visitors.
Because I know expectations, things are going up every year. You
Yeah.
can't help it. And people are expecting it, to be honest with you. Another $2-3 isn't hurt at all, because that's a general trend. I mean, whatever you do these days, whether you go to a hotel or anything, you're gonna get an increase.
Yeah.
I see it. I see boats, I do a lot of business with Canadian boats. And look at they're paying for fuel, gasoline, it's $6 a gallon at the pump for a boat. I mean, a couple of years ago, it was 3 something, now it's $6. So, I mean, yeah.
We really tried as much as possible to keep things really affordable. So we may be a little under, like to be a little under, the market rate rather than a little over, but that's a big part of our operating budget, so we have an eye on that.
So that's a good point as far as market rate. Are you comparing to like campgrounds and all that? But I think you said that you were comparing to what other parks were doing, other state parks were doing. Is that?
State park systems.
So that's what it is. You're just kind of comparing your rates to other state parks, and
Yeah.
that's how you derive at that.
Yeah.
We are seeing about 40% increase in just inflation right now.
Oh, yeah.
And the increases that we established last year actually have been reinvested into staffing, particularly our seasonal staff that we bring on. We were having a hard time recruiting last year. Our wages were really low, so they were
You don't have
reclassified.
to raise their wages, because you can't hire anybody $15 an hour, those days are hard to come by.
Yeah, and we need, it's a really important job, important service for the state, and so that's really what the majority of the funds went to. Parks is currently right now under contract with a consultant, Barry Dunn Associates, to do a modernization study. So they are looking at everything from our fees, our organizational structure, our operations, and that should be to us by maybe May or June of this year. That'll help us get a beat on where we should be going for the future.
So I think you had said earlier during the presentation, you've given a number about what the help that you're bringing in, the seasonal help that you're bringing in. What's that number?
We usually around 400 seasonal staff we bring on.
And so I imagine that some of them are coming in from out of state and don't
Yes.
have housing. So how are you housing all these folks?
Well, that is an important piece of it, is staff housing, and we do have some staff housing, but we're looking to improve on that. A lot of that was developed back in the CCC era, so they need some improvements. I'm gonna pass it to Nick, because he really knows the housing.
We really feel our seasonal staff, they're very diverse. They come from all over the country. Our park managers, about half of those folks come from out of state. And they often stay when they get here. And then they can work at ski areas. But if we have housing for them, in the operating season, they're required to live in the park. It's part of their job.
Really? Yeah.
If we can keep them on and they pay rent in the off season, they can work somewhere else and keep an eye on the facilities in the park. And it gives them a home base to stay in Vermont. So we really been trying to focus on our staff housing. We have everything from legacy housing from CCC, mid-century eras. And then we built a couple of duplexes. We also are really focusing on work camper programs and sites. So we put in sites with full hookups. People come with their vans and RVs and stay. We're really trying to get creative with what we do with our little bit of money that we get for staff housing. Sure. It's our #1 recruitment tool. Sure. And I'll just say one more thing, sorry, Danny, that we, about a little over a year ago, our entry level pay was $11.72 an hour. And we did a market analysis with HR and within Vermont, and we've been able to raise our starting pay to $16.32 an hour, and that's also helped a lot.
Yeah, sure it has.
A few years ago, we were talking legislature, we're gonna raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour in 2025. Oh, it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
Today.
Nobody's even talking about it.
No, I mean, you can't, I employ a lot of high school kids. They're not gonna talk to you less than $15
Right,
an hour.
yeah.
They go somewhere else and get 16.
It's been great for kids.
Yeah, I know, it's wonderful. They went from here to here pretty fast.
So I always thought that there were like college age students that would come back in the summer and work in the park. And then there were retired folks that kind of,
Yeah,
is that still true? I'm kind of amazed to hear all the out of state folks that are coming in.
and that'll be a lot of the college younger will come in from out of state, and also, I don't know, some people come in their RVs, and they hook up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they'll wanna stay
That's a
for.
great idea.
So they spend it in the park, right here.
Yeah.
But park housing is an area that we need to focus more on, certainly, like there is some improvements. And the next line item really is our large, actually, the first line item is, I gotta open the Zoom links up. So line 94, this is our infrastructure rehabilitation and improvement, which would include park housing. And the way we have $3.5 million for FY '24 and $3 million for FY '25. And the way that we look at this funds is that we like to be able to be flexible and consistent with the funding, so we can adapt the best we can, but we really break it down into 4 buckets. We have smaller scale projects, when you think of roofs, electrical systems, finishings and fixtures, sort of those smaller components that make up the larger infrastructure. Our next category is emergency wastewater reserve. Reality is, we need wastewater systems in our parks, and typically if there's any sort of failure, it's gonna happen right in the middle of the season. So we just keep a little reserve fund in case we need to go in there and make some quick fixes.
July 4th weekend or something.
If we don't need it, it's great, it goes to large scale projects. We have smaller scale roads, I mean, that's accessing the parks, we need to make sure, think about bridges and culverts, it's really those linear assets. And then the last category is our large scale initiatives, those are our bathrooms, our showers, large scale park rehabilitation. Some examples are just redoing Sandbar entrance, we did some work at Mount Philo, there's need at Maidstone, so these are like larger scale, like redesign. The parks team is just fantastic at doing master plans for parks, so they all of them really have a vision of what we're going for, and they sort of plan this all out. Right now, we work really closely with the Agency of Natural Resources Facility Engineering and Design Program, and we have about 5 to 6 years of projects already designed in the queue, ready to go. So these funds can easily be moved out the door because we have a pipeline in place. Just kind of want to give you of the way we look at using these capital funds sort of in 3 buckets. We've got the customer care, those are the people visiting the parks, want to make sure they have clean functioning bathrooms, and they have the amenities to enjoy state parks. We also really have the systems here that's kind of behind the scenes, but like the water system, the wastewater system, we've been calling them sort of like the circulatory system, the digestive system.
Any town sewers or municipal water, you have some?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have 1 town sewer, Brighton.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, Crystal Lake. Apologize.
Crystal, I was gonna say, yeah,
Not Brighton.
I just say Brighton, I don't know, like, I can see where Crystal Lake would be.
Crystal Lake's 1
That's
town.
a big
That's in
expense.
Barton.
That's a big expense, the sewer line, yeah.
Yeah.
Septic system. And you have to dig for water, right, or because you get a well because you don't have municipal water. Wow.
It's a business, it's in-state government, and there's a lot of infrastructure associated with it. And the last one is, we bring out, as we talked about, so many seasonal employees and our 43 full-time employees. It's about employee care, making sure we have big service centers, they have the housing that they need. And I think there's a picture of the back of the house there. Like I think that kind of also shows you anytime we're doing any sort of renovations or new construction, we're steering away from fossil fuel. This is an electric heating and cooling pump. So that's always in our minds to be thinking about, like, how do we make ourselves, as energy efficient as we can.
Is that system that's in the middle, is that a heat pipe underground? Heat pump or is that septic?
That's a Presby system we just installed down at Fort Dummer. Yeah, we didn't, state parks didn't buy the best perking soils, so we get a little creative. We have to work with our agency partners to design systems that work.
What did you call it?
Yeah,
It's called a Presby system. It's a
Presby?
PRESBY. It's a proprietary system of disposal that, just for that site, we had to use that system in order to meet a good standard of disposal.
So it's instead of the septic.
It is a septic. Essentially, it's a fancy disposal system.
How long does it last?
In a drain well.
How long does it last?
Hopefully at least 20 to 30 years, but I apologize, I'm not entirely familiar with it.
So the Presby Systems, I'm quite a bit, actually, I just sold a commercial building for that company. The Presby Systems, just being in my real estate practice, are systems that were developed to work in soils, as you had said, that are less permeable, and they are able to breathe a little bit more. And it just it was a new design septic system to work in soils that just weren't really good for much else. And most times it got away from having to bring in a mound system where expensive soils and all of that stuff. Yeah. It's just, there was a series of pipes and breathing and all of that stuff. It just was able to clean whatever what they're trying to do and disperse it.
If you look at the surface area of the disposal pipes, it's huge compared to a classic leach system. It's, just so much interface between the whatever's being disposed and the surrounding areas.
And Frank, would that be buried? I mean, it's only there to kind of look at here, or is that?
Yeah, so the engineers provide this picture, the facilities engineers that the commissioner's talking about. And this is obviously the pressure test, so they're testing it before they finish, but it'll be covered and turf, it'll be turf, yeah.
Then does it have to be emptied like a septic?
No, that's the
There's no
disposal field,
maintenance?
that's an equivalent to a leach field essentially, or mound.
But even with a leach field, septic needs some,
It's still a tank.
Well, there's still a tank and pre-treatment to that, yes.
okay.
And yeah, so I think everything's pretty standard up to that point.
Okay, so that's instead of the leach field.
Yeah.
Interesting. And it's made in Vermont, maybe?
Well, they're companies from New Hampshire. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're from New Hampshire, and anybody that's in the real estate business are gonna know that Presby system.
So they have
They-
houses too?
Absolutely. They
That's
actually,
areas where they got clay and stuff.
the heavier soils and stuff. Yeah, they're
I never really had that.
in our business, that name, they've really changed the way that, the old conventional thought of septic system worked was this design, what they did. Yeah.
I kind of love that we just talked about wastewater systems.
No, we like stuff like
I
that.
know, I love
We spent a lot of
it.
time on it. No, we spent a lot of money on it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's important, yeah. So that's line item 94. I can go on to the next one, which is line item 95.
Sure.
And this one really is about investing in replacing 2 maintenance and operation facilities that service really half of our state parks. So basically, this is the facility it's not the public facing, but it's the behind the scene where our maintenance staff work out of. In the picture here, we were trying to be a little funny because we talk about toilets all the time. In state parks, I think we determined how many, 800 seats?
Yeah.
800 toilet seats. So the image on your left is actually a maintenance facility at the Waterbury Complex. A nice maintenance facility. The one in the middle is what we're looking at Gifford Woods in Killington. That's our current state. The shower actually is also a broom closet. And then you can also see on the right, it's just a really tight space. Things are cramped up. This is another picture, like we're about 80% done on the designs for these facilities. This is the old boiler system. We'll have new, I think it's gonna be, is it wood heat?
We're gonna do the air source for conditioning in the summer and heating shoulder season. Then we're doing a pellet fire furnace for the DP, the cold weather heat.
So both of these facilities will meet contemporary code, and they'll be flexible for our 8 to 10 regular staff. And then when we blow up in the summertime, it's kind of like the hub of a wheel, really, of activity. So we know that we're going to start with Gifford Woods. We know these funds will get us fully built and designed for different woods, and then we'll move over to build up Groton.
Is Groton the Seon Ranch, or is there beyond Seon Ranch and Groton?
The Groton facility is actually near New Discovery State Park. It's on the main
Okay.
forest road there. That's actually a legacy from the CCC. We were actually, until this time last year, we were still doing maintenance in an 80-year-old barn.
Yeah, okay.
There's a hub of parks there in Brockton.
Yeah.
This maintenance
Okay.
facilities, services, yeah, there's campgrounds, day use areas, there's 4 or 5 parks that are really popular.
Oh, yeah, so that's when you guys go over from 302 to,
Yeah.
that's all up through there is all that park stuff, okay.
It's kind of on the other side of the forest.
Yeah.
I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yep,
So we estimate probably about 28 to 30 parks will be serviced by these 2 facilities that are really just, I should have showed you some pictures of just how much they are failing and at their end of life right now. Any questions on those 2 facilities? I have one more line item for parks.
those, the pellet boilers, that's bulk pellets augers in, and so you just keep the bulk pellet filled and it just maintains itself. No employee has to feed that.
Right, because what you're looking at is the chunk furnace, chunk wood, oil back, whatever that is, unit at Gifford Woods. And, you know, folks try to load it, but you can't load it enough to burn it through the night. And the pellets would be the heat source.
So instead of the chunk wood.
Yeah.
Right, correct.
So there'll be modern facilities, but they're not extravagant facilities. They're definitely the maintenance and operations facilities that provide the nice adequate space for staff to, you know, they're taking care of the people, the visitors, and it allows them to really function. Not as efficient if we don't have this good maintenance facilities.
Did you mention those are ready to bid?
Yeah, we're close to being ready to bid.
Right on the cusp.
And then the last line item for state parks is really just helping us keep up with the regulatory requirement around the 3-acre stormwater rule.
Well, that's gonna cost.
Yeah,
We've got 119 acres of impervious surface through 19 parks right now. And Frank has been fantastic in leading this effort of designing and engineering to be ready for construction, to meet up with the dates requirements for when we have to be really be compliance. So these funds, we're asking for $250,000 for the next 2 years, really helps us get our projects ready, designed, and then we'll need to be construction. What you're looking at here is funds from capital. The previous biennium allowed us to design the project, and then we were able to capitalize on ARPA funds to do the implementation of the project in Underhill State Park.
What is the 3 acre? What is the 3 acre about?
well, I was gonna actually ask that question as well. So is the 3 acre, is that state or federal?
State.
State? So
What does it mean?
So it's 3 acres of, if you have 3 acres of impervious surface, so water is not able to infiltrate into the ground,
Okay.
you need to put in best management practices to manage stormwater runoff to protect water quality. So it's measured when they were looking at how to meet water quality standards for Lake Champlain. They implemented the law, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's called the 3 acre. So if you have 3 acres of impervious surface, you now need to design and engineer stormwater management best practices. State parks falls into that because we have roads, we have campsites, buildings. And so in many cases, we do the best we can to like disconnect and let the water infiltrate. But in some cases, you really do need to engineer systems to, you know,
So who determines whether it's impervious surface? I mean, I gotta talk to somebody the other day, they said it's gonna cost like $6 million. And so how are people gonna handle this? And who determines whether that ground is?
Right, so-
There's people go out and check it or something.
well, the Department of Environmental Conservation does have a database, and I think they estimate, and then developed areas will need to be working with engineers to
Towns are going crazy.
And you get-
Everything we pay, so
Fairgrounds.
schools,
Fairgrounds,
yeah, car dealerships, schools, anything with paved parking lots.
Our fairgrounds, yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah, fairgrounds.
Costs us like $6 million. I mean, Where, I just want to work with this kind of money.
Yeah. Luckily, there is funding in the Clean Water Fund, so I'm assuming you've heard, you're funding probably some of that here through this. And then also we've been fortunate with funding from federal funding, which will be going out to, well, probably a lot of municipalities.
Thanks, Brian. You're gonna get more of those today.
Do you want to add anything to that, Frank, on 3 acres?
No, other than to say is that this seemingly modest amount for what is a very large initiative, this is really just priming the pump for what's going to be a future ask for more money that ARPA
Well, how
can't.
many years are you gonna need to do this?
I think, well, we do a 10-year plan that we submit with our capital bill, and it extends beyond that.
Okay.
So,
You're a good one. I didn't know what that.
Does it always have to be, and I know that when you do ground improvements and stuff, it is considered infrastructure, but do you guys have anything where you're directing water into, like a pond, settlement pond, or type stuff?
and it's okay. I mean, we're attacking this from every possible angle. And that North Hero example is actually a 3-acre project, because if you take all the roads that are in North Hero, even though they're not used, they're still impervious surface. That project there is actually to remove the impervious surface and get it below the 3-acre threshold.
Yeah.
So we're actually removing the park infrastructure to create a more natural environment for the area, yet still offer the day use activity. For other parks, there's been discussion, you can get credits by reforesting. That's a conversation at Lake Carmi and at Mount Philo, where there's open fields now, where we could reforest actively. We haven't quite pulled the trigger on that yet. And in other places, like at Kingsland Bay, where we're in the midst of design, we're going to have to put in hard stormwater treatment systems. Sandbar project actually came, we were designing that right in the middle of the 3-acre rule coming up. So before the 3-acre rule, if you changed your surface, you had to address stormwater. So we were already in for that with that project. So it was just really about finishing what was left at the park to apply the 3 acres. So we're tackling it every different way possible, including at the campsites, just making sure the sites drain into the ground forest floor, don't channel, don't run off. So there's a vast way, there's a lot of ways to do it, and that's what this money's going to pay for, is for the engineers to figure that out.
So most of all of what you're planning isn't wastewater, it's groundwater. It's groundwater runoff, and so you are gonna have to, and you already have, I imagine, put in treatment facilities. I mean, actually not a Presley system, but something that's actually gonna collect this water and purify
The
it.
south end of Willoughby, if you go up to the south end of Willoughby, what you'll see there is parking lot and then the rest is stormwater treatment.
Yeah.
So there are active stormwater treatment systems at that park, which will require inspection and maintenance.
So you're gonna have power and everything there?
No, a lot of these are just passive gravity.
Passive gravity, okay.
Yeah, the system going into sandbars is, like I call stormwater the one ring that rules them all, because it's all about gravity.
Yeah.
And so, it's all about getting it to that retention pond and treating it for either enters the water table or is discharged.
So most of what you're trying to treat, because it's coming off the ground, you're just trying to prevent sedimentation. That's why you're trying to just get that water to settle out and then to dump it back.
I'm trying to slow it down and split it up and not have it discharge as a gush anywhere.
Let it soak in, yeah. We like to use what we call green infrastructure, where it's actually using like natural systems to actually filter and let the water filter.
Do we have any parks that are a problem with green algae and all? I mean, because I know in our area, we don't have, luckily, in Mountains Bay, we don't have it in some of the islands. I don't think Sandbar has it. Do we have parks that have the algae problem?
We have 2 parks that probably pop more than any others, and that's Lake Carmi and Kingsland Bay. And we have
Where's Kingsland Bay?
That's down outside Virgins, it's in Ferrisburg, just it's near.
St. Albans was bothered, but I don't know.
Yeah, Auburn Dunes has had problems too from time to time.
I haven't heard a lot about it lately, so I didn't know if it was something.
Hence the 3 acre stormwater rule.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's all kind of related.
I think the problem that Burlington was having with their water quality this summer drove quite a few people to Sandbar.
Yes,
Where they don't have that problem.
Yeah, because in Burlington, every weekend, they were,
Yeah.
Yeah.
their sewer overflow was constant. And the beach is just down the street a few feet, with the sewer outlet, so I wouldn't want to go to North Beach. So they were they were going elsewhere. Burlington to address that sooner rather than later. I don't know how they're going to do that. Because I believe they were on it.
And back onto that, I mean, do you ever hear from the towns that, hey, you guys are stealing our people, or you don't hear much of that?
No,
It's
we
all
have a
pretty
great-
amicable with
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, we have great partnership with Burlington and other towns.
Yeah.
We're just all in it for the same goal.
And even, I mean, that you can consider the parks actually economic engine in some of these communities. They
Yeah.
bring tourists
Sure,
there.
right. Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, they're going in there, if they're tent camping and all that, they're buying supplies, they're buying
Local
everything,
store.
they're buying the fuel that they get there, and, yeah.
North Beach State Park.
Burlington City
Yeah.
Park.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have affiliation with that one?
No, we just collaborate together.
Okay, so that's their park. They
Yeah.
maintain it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are our 3 line items for state parks. The next, if you're ready to, I'm happy to hang out with state parks more because they're pretty awesome. The next 3 line items really are thinking about the recreational assets and infrastructure outside of the developed state parks. And so line item 97 is called open access recreation areas. If we look at what FPR manages for the state, we have almost 200,000 acres. And a lot of, you know, a huge draw for so many people to come and explore all of our trails and wonderful, you know, access areas. For example, what you're looking at here is one of 8 fire towers across state lands. These are historic structures. People come in droves to just hike up for the view, but they need investments to keep them, you know, well maintained. It's preserved historic nature of them, safety features. So that's just one example where this type of, we don't put, it's free, so we don't have park fees, but they are used quite heavily. Another example is, and Frank just mentioned it, this is the south end of Willoughby. It's not a state park, but I hope you've been there. It's just a fantastic spot.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, and I know you guys have gotten a lot of pushback as far as to go in there and to, but to be honest with you, the amount of use is absolutely positively punishing that land.
Yeah,
And so, when you've got that many people coming into a natural state, it's not natural anymore. When you see the foot traffic that is there, I've told the committee before, and new committee this year, you go to Willoughby on the south end, it's not uncommon to see 300 vehicles parked everywhere they could possibly park.
yeah.
You've got 2 big mountains right there, and they go up, and they Mount Pisgah and Mount Moore. Yeah, the hiking trails. Yeah, and then yeah.
And that's what it is. We have so many people coming to these fantastic places that in order for us to manage the people and protect the resources, we need to invest in the infrastructure. So south end of Willoughby, we've probably invested a little over 1.3 or $5 million, which is parking, putting in pads for toilet facilities, accessible trails, stormwater management. And that's just because we're trying to protect and manage the people and the resources.
So there's no charge.
Well, the thing about it is that those, where it's nice to have the state involvement is that these people are coming anyways. I mean, they're coming, and they've been coming for some time, and they're just pounding the heck out of that nature. And yeah, I mean, you've got all of, when you start getting 300 vehicles parked side the road, and I don't know how many people that equates to, but it's just, you know, human involvement without some kind of management is before too long, it's not a pretty sight.
We say we don't want to love them to death, is
Yeah.
what we say, and then we are also challenged right now because we do need staffing at those facilities, because we need to manage the people. So, yeah,
Just a question, in Wyndham County, there's an area on Route 30, where the West River is becoming.
Hamilton Falls, maybe?
Yes.
Yes, Hamilton Falls is another one on our list to do
So-
some improvements.
Yeah, because I was wondering how something gets on your list. Do you just wait to be called?
Well, we have, this is great that you're asking that, we actually have what we call it project pipeline. So we have staff across the state in the regions that put in projects. And we run them through a set of criteria to rank them. And it's, first of all, it's safety, you know, maintenance, access. So, and our list is 17 million long right now. And some things right now are at the point where we're gonna need to close off because they're not safe. And it's just a reality that we've never actually had a funding, this is the first time we're asking for capital funds for these infrastructures outside of state parks.
So does the state own this property?
Yep.
So do you make sure you own property before you
Yeah, these
do
are all,
anything to it?
these are all state-owned facilities.
What part of that do you, of the south end of Willoughby do you own? I mean, you own all the mountains, I mean, because they're old CCC camps and
Yep,
all of that.
That's all.
So that's all state forest through there and it comes down into that parking area around the south end where the beach is and all of that.
Yeah,
And where Willoughby actually has an area that it's clothing optional. And do you own that
yes,
part?
we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you know that?
I saw Dick there once. I only wanted to see it once.
The day you were on your boat.
Yeah.
With binoculars.
This, so that's line item 97. We have a lot of these, like we have Big Falls, we have Hamilton Falls, we have several popular swimming hole destinations. And you can imagine all of our trails that are just seeing huge demands, and we need to provide access, parking. This next one will give you an idea of like what you're talking about, getting cars off the roads. This is a real impediment for towns, and getting them into parking. Then also here it's managing stormwater. These pictures don't actually align. On the left is Stowe Pinnacle. On the right is actually Monroe Trail going up Camel's Hump. But this line item is really about providing best management practices for state forest recreational asset points. This is around stormwater management again. We have, in this example here, we built the parking lot. We also, for access, but also want to make sure we're managing stormwater right. We also have, also going up Camel's Hump is called the Burrows Trail. It's a 5.5 mile trail. We identified 300 points along the trail that need improvements. That project alone is $1 million. We've been lucky to get some federal funds to support that, but they are erosion points. We need to be rehabilitating those types of trails. These are sometimes the types of systems that we put in. This is Mount Philo, and this goes up to the top of the mountain, and if without those stairs there, it was a lot of erosion and impacted water quality. We built a bridge to go to a certain area. So this type of capital investments really is about access and also protecting water quality. And then the last one is our linear access roads. We have 600 miles of roads within our 200,000 acres, and we barely are able to maintain them. So right now, there's really rehabilitation that we really need to do. They were built in the early 20th century with a little bit of an investment back in the 30s, but they weren't built to current standards. They haven't been really maintained. So this would be an investment in getting those roads that a lot of times are public access for forest management, but also really popular like commuter and tourist routes. You know, if you think about, there's a CCC road between Shrewsbury and Plymouth that is very heavily traveled by both tourists and local commuters. So those are 3 line items that are support public lands, infrastructure, capital investments outside of designated state parks. And I just want to go to the last one because it ties the road one together. And this is the line item. I'm going to go quicker here. This is line item in Clean Water Funds, line 119. And this is really, I'm going to go back to the previous slide. So I'm sure you've heard of the work that's going on in municipalities when they do a municipal general permit and they've been inventorying their roads to identify points of sedimentation.
Right.
Well, we're doing that on our state roads as well. And so what you're looking at here is all those colored areas. If they're red, yellow, or orange, those areas need improvements to protect water quality. That's what the Clean Water Funds will support. All the gray areas, they're not hydrologically connected and will not qualify for clean water funds, but we still have a lot of road maintenance needs on there. So combine the clean water fund with the other line item under section 9, we're able to maintain the whole network of our roads.
What's, AMP, what's that mean, AMP standards?
A&P standards are acceptable management practices for protecting water quality. So basically, we have a set of standards that we would need to meet to bring those roads up to, we put a bunch of practices in place to get those roads to protect water quality. So that may be water bars, upsizing culverts, bridges. Actually, I can give you an example because the last slide kind of
You
showed.
probably already said this, Danny, and I apologize again. But by doing this, does this open you up for more federal dollars to help with this, or it's just?
We don't get any federal dollars right now for water quality practices on state lands. A lot of the federal dollars will go to municipalities. We did get federal dollars when it was COVID relief money because of the increase in usage of state lands. We were able to get some funds with CARES funds, really, not ARPA, CARES. So we were able to get funds which helped to support that Philo project and many other, that parking lot that you saw at Camel's Hump was funded with CARE dollars, which was huge because we really don't ever have access to that kind of resources. And then also, just so you know too, we are making a really strong investment in making trails where we can accessible, ADA accessible.
Mount Philo Park, is that, I go by it used to go by it all the time and always see it and all that. Does that have any historical nature to Vermont as far as during the war or Revolutionary War or 1812 or anything like that?
Well, it is our very first state park, and it became a state park in 1924. There's a CCC component there. As far as a war, I gotta believe there's all kinds of history to that hilltop there. Are you aware of anything?
I'm not aware of any specific, no.
Okay. So it's basically from the CCC eras.
Yeah.
Are there structures up there now?
Yeah, there's a beautiful pavilion, log pavilion, and a restroom off the back of it. There's a park manager quarters at the top. Of course, one of the most iconic views in Vermont.
Yeah.
And then there's a composting toilet up there also.
Yeah.
So many parts of Vermont we never see.
Power runs there to that site?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should take you on a tour.
Speaking of that,
We should.
have most of the folks been to all the state parks that work for FDR?
I think in state parks, they know their regions, if they work in the regions, they've been to
Yeah.
all of them, but there is an effort to get out, visit as much as you can.
I know there's a club, the 250 Club, whatever, where, is there the same sort of thing for state park thing?
We definitely have thought about for the visitors, if you hit every state,
Yeah.
camp in every state park, visit every state park. We have different little programs like that. As far as our park staff go, we encourage them, particularly the folks that come on in the operating season, the seasonals. They get free camping, so on their time off, they can go and visit other parks, and I think a lot of them do. For us full-time folks, the longer you've been around, the more parks you've been to.
Yeah.
So we've been to like every one, right? Many
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Good for you.
So toughest question we're gonna ask. Favorite one?
I was gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Well, I actually started out as a seasonal park manager in Waterbury at Little River State Park, up against the backdrop of Mount Mansfield State Forest. And to me, that's just an amazing campground. You're near a lot of cool activity, Waterbury Stowe, but you're 3 miles up the road into the park. You got the reservoir right there, water reservoir. So, and it's just.
Green River, is that Green River?
No, that's Waterbury Reservoir.
Yeah.
And then with tons of hiking up in the forest, it's just, and history, it's fantastic.
What's your favorite one, Frank?
I'm particularly fond of Brighton and then Silver Lake. For two different reasons, yeah.
Yeah, that bright one's a nice one. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice location.
I was gonna say Brighton too.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have favorites?
Yeah, my district. Oh, yeah, my district, yeah, well, hey, listen, they spend a little bit more, out there, so, you beach here someday, you'll get that shit too.
I've always liked Emerald Lake because not a lot of people go there.
That's
Yeah.
So
nice.
you could sort of be away from everything.
Yeah,
I raised my daughter at Waterbury Center State
Yeah.
Park,
yeah.
total community beach, it was fantastic.
Actually, it didn't hurt to have Acadians back home with the border open last year.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I think you led me into a trap. I'm not supposed to say which one I like.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was gonna put a disclaimer on it, but I did it, but, I'm sorry.
I think we all know you like them. right?
Yeah.
Which one's your favorite kid?
I want to be.
Yeah. My granddaughter, great-granddaughter, grandson, so they're all my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
I wanna go back to what Nate said about Philo being first state park. 1924, which means next year is the 100-year celebration for Vermont State Park, so we're
Yeah.
hoping to do some
Yeah.
year-long celebration.
I wonder why it took so long, because, the big pushes were for Yellowstone and all that in the late 1800s, so I wonder why it took so long for the, for that. to
Yeah,
happen.
I think it's the nature of the state park systems, because we're finding all around the country, a lot of state park systems are turning 90 or 100.
Yeah.
Like Oregon just turned 100
Yeah.
this past year. So
Yeah.
I think it's the nature of how the organization stateside kind of gets started versus the national parks.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you applied for commissioner job?
I'm interim commissioner.
Good answer. Well, you sound qualified for that.
I'll tell you, this FPR is a fantastic team, and I've been leading hard, and they've been holding me up, so I'm grateful.
Always had good overview of your parks, always on the.
Yeah, well, it's-
This committee, everybody's been really dedicated people.
Yeah.
Really.
It's a great place to work.
How many of the cabins that you're building, what are you up to now as far as the self-contained cabins?
Oh.
Yeah.
Around 60.
Like 60.
We ran the numbers, the ones we just put in service at Queechee, they went into service late last summer. We finally got them up to be rentable there. 53% rented already for next year.
Wow.
No kidding, right straight through, just that rented.
So yeah, the 53% of the available nights are already booked.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know what the standard is for.
They've been telling us how much of a success they were and what people really liked them for. What I liked about them, the best, and I know that you and I talked about it, is that you guys are putting them on underperforming tent sites that you had a hard time to rent. And so that's pretty exciting as well. Taking prime real estate to put these in and getting back your return. It's very nice.
I can tell you, I prefer cabins a lot now. I also bring an air mattress now.
Yeah,
I would go with tent thing.
yeah, I like the Camel Plaza quite well.
That's not a state park.
No, is it? Oh, darn.
You don't have room service.
Oh, shoot.
Can't pick up the phone till you want a beer.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're building those with Rutland Tech Center? Some of
Yeah,
them.
so, yeah, you actually were generous and provided 2 years of funding for cabins.
Yeah.
And the first round of funding, a lot of it was consumed by Queechee with the construction inflation we saw. The next parks up are New Discovery, Carmi, and Branbury. Basically, whoever's ready first gets them. And New Discovery looks like it's going to be, that's got some underperforming sites that are going to be awesome for cabins. And those are going to be ready to bid here very soon. We have to jump through some archaeological hoops. But we're going to be ready with those very soon. That's we're spending the second round of money on that. The Rutland Technical Center is part of that initiative to work with the technical centers to try to build some cabins. The Rutland Center is actually working on cabins at Lake St. Catherine State Park.
Yeah.
They are invested heavily with that program. We're kind of trialing it with that technical center. That it is on the very furthest extent of their ability to travel, because every minute they travel is a minute they can't instruct. So, or times 2 is a minute they can't instruct. So it's right on the edge of their travel envelope. So, but we're working through that program. And that was some redirected money last year for the cabin program.
Tell me the makeup of the Vermont technical folks. Is it a place what is that organization?
So it's the technical training centers to the high school. I think that was called the Stafford, is that the right name?
Stafford.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
because there's two that sound the same, like mix them up. But there's high school students learning trades.
Yep.
And this one's actually the Forestry Natural Resources group that's doing these cabins, because they actually were milling the lumber.
Yeah.
So they've taken it from nuts to bolts on this, so we're pretty excited to see it happen. And St. Catherine's a giant park, and it definitely has a place that cabin works, and pulling the power to the site and everything. And that'll be a nice add to that park. And we'll get to work with the students. And I love the idea of youth investing in the parks, because it's just
absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
That's in my backyard, so I'm happy to hear that too. Is that the only tech center that's gonna do this?
Yes, so far, and we're hoping this is a good model to go for. We are struggling with the travel time. COVID really knocked us for a little.
Yeah.
But it is, yeah, they've been great with us, working with us and
Yeah.
trying to figure it out.
I think there's 10 or maybe 11 tech centers in the state.
They're all over.
I could be off by a couple.
We also,
Essex has one.
but then that builds skidder bridges too, which is temporary
yeah,
bridges over
sure.
stream crossings when you're doing forestry operations. That's great with that.
And those can happen in the shop, so that's handy.
I built a little 16, or had built a little 16 by 16 inside diameter cabin this year. And all the lumber come off my land and milled it from my land. And so, yeah, it's just, it's probably a little bit fancier than what the state parks are doing. And I can say that I'm glad the state parks don't have what I have in mind. But it is exciting. It is fun. I'm pretty close to that. And, yeah, so it is pretty exciting at any level, whether it's, just a basic design or whatever, when you're sitting in there and looking around, so, oh man, that was, that come off of this land, so it's kind of neat.
How many acres of forest do we have?
How many what?
Acres of forest.
Overall, in the state,
Yeah.
4.5 million. 4.5 million, 80% privately owned, about 20% public owned land. 2 million in use value appraisal program, forest land category.
And we harvest logs, and if we sell logs off the state land,
Yeah, we have a forest management, we do forest management, probably about 300, 500 acres a year, maybe. It's a long process. We go through a long range management planning process, which means we assess the land, we classify it, and then we go through a public input process. And forest management is one use of the land, but there's so many.
And what bucket does that money fall back into?
Falls back into the Land Facilities Trust Fund, which is, we use a very small percentage of that to reinvest in stewardship on the land. A lot of that funds goes to the ongoing maintenance, like vegetation management, invasive species control on the land, some staffing for temporary. But it's probably, we only use maybe $200,000 a year. The rest of it is in the Land Facilities Trust Fund.
do you plant trees again?
Certainly, that's another good use of it. There are occasions where we do plant trees.
And are we using best practice as far as to sell the lumber? Some of it could go to veneer, some could go to cordwood, some could go to just log.
Yeah. Our management objectives is really looking at the future forests, and also what are the other objectives, like is it wildlife habitat? Are we thinking, we're looking for resilient, healthy forests in the future? We're not really driven by markets as much, which is nice that we don't have to be driven by markets like maybe some of the other landowners. But certainly, some of it will go to saw logs, some of it will go to fuel, some of it will go to firewood, some of it will go to roundwood. It's based on a silviculture prescription we have in the forestry division, 43 licensed foresters on staff. Sounds like a lot, but they're all really work really hard. And our state lands foresters, you can imagine there's 19 in the program, and that manages all of our recreational trail assets, all those roads that you looked at, and also all the management on the land. Quite a bit. And the long range management planning process, which takes a long time to get through that. To do it thoughtfully.
So I imagine on a lot of those trails, they're actually hiking trails and looking for problem trees is something that could be a danger to, something dying, tree branches, limbs, all that.
Absolutely. We are fortunate that we have an in-house state trails crew, and we also partner with trail organizations like BYCC, the Green Mountain Club, Northwood Stewardship Center, and they try to do roving across this field season to look for hot spots and to correct any sort of hazards on the trail. And then they'll do projects as well. We do get some federal money from the National Park Service to invest back in trails, but it's pretty tight. But we stretch it pretty good.
Many years ago, we gave you money for bridges, for a bridge, for all logs out of portable bridges, to move from place to place, all logs out.
Yes. The Skidder Bridge program, and we were able to get those funds now to Clean Water General Fund supporting that. We grant that out, and we build bridges to the conservation services that rent them out. So bloggers do need them, they can access them.
So from my time on ag, and this will be my 4th term there, and Senator Renner.
Oh, I didn't know that. You've been through 4 terms on that. I didn't know that, yeah.
So your predecessor, Mike Schneider, and my chair, and I used to just think, you put the forest away and you just let it grow and you don't worry about it. And that's probably the worst thing you can do for it, because you need to actively manage it.
Right.
And with some thought. I mean, you can't just start cutting everything down either, but it really is it's a science. It's really.
Yeah,
I had
Sounds
one of
like-
my eyes at one time, two old farmers who thought the same thing, and they had this side hill, and they were raised on this farm, and they were absolutely positively raised on the farm. And economic times hit, and they were done farming, and so anyways, they sold sugar bush that they thought had just wouldn't grow anymore, and this and that. They sold the rights to the land trust. They came in and did management on the forest. And this old sugar bush, he says, Russ, he said, I couldn't believe after they told him how many tons of underbrush and bad lumber we took out of there. And he said, you can almost see those maple trees grow. I couldn't believe what it did for that forest. And it happens to be one of the most beautiful spots. It's up around Lake Seymour, where when the leaves are just right, that whole hillside just lights right up like it's on fire. Yeah. I can't remember now if they were actually maple sugar. I think they probably were. Yeah, but he said really, these two old guys that were raised on that farm their whole life, they just couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe the transformation of something they thought that they knew, generation upon generation, and what it would do with the management.
Love it.
Yeah, so, well, good.
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Well, thank you guys. We got a great overview, great presentation, and we enjoyed it very much. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for
Any
the
questions, or
insights.
if you want a tour, let us know.
Yeah, if you want to see anything, let us know.
Okay, sounds
You can
good.
go to one of your favorites.
Yeah. One of 40.
You got
Yeah.
ATV to take us?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So, I'm sorry, Senator Renner, did you have any questions before they left?
She went to sleep.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All set. Thanks.
Well, committee, unless we have any topics of discussion or anything before we call it a day?
I got a few calls to make.